ready to talk about actually filming on your trip. There's been a lot of sort of preparation for this moment. I think this is an important moment that a lot of you have come to this class looking for. How do we ensure that when we're on the ground, we actually capture the details and the shots that we need to construct a compelling story? So in this chapter, we're going to go over all the aspects of travel storytelling when you are actually on your trip. My first big thought about being on the ground is that everything you've planned and outlined will be totally different than what you expected. No amount of planning can prepare you fully for the realities of being on the ground and seeing the place. Like, you can't actually fulfill your expectations because a place is so much more complicated than anything you can plan for. So be ready to have a lot of things change. Be ready to reform your visual anchors and your expectations. Everything's going to be flipped on its head, and that's good. That's part of the fun. That's the excitement of this craft. Like travel itself, travel storytelling requires the ability to embrace uncertainty. So just be ready for that.
I love the unpredictability that comes with this kind of work. That's what I live for. I think it's what I'm consciously or unconsciously always seeking out. Travel is always kind of unpredictable. I don't even try to plan things out too rigidly for that reason. And it's also helpful to remember that the point of many of my travels is to change my mind anyway. I'm trying to expand my perspective on the world and on humanity and on life and all of it. So here are a few key points that I suggest keeping in mind before you go out on your trip, just based on my own perspective, my own approach. These are the sorts of things that I try to think a lot about. Insane readiness. It's one thing to be traveling somewhere, and it's one entirely other thing. It's to be not just having that experience in traveling, but also capturing that experience. And as I've talked about earlier on in this course, the act of carrying around a camera with you, the act of capturing these moments and documenting these moments, and hopefully documenting them in a visually interesting way, adds a whole nother layer of stress and just something else to consider. The idea of insane readiness is really simple, and yet it's not easy to master. You should always be within 10 seconds of having a camera out and capturing the moment. Things sometimes happen very quickly, and if you aren't ready and set up to go, the moment, the experience, the conversation, the person, whatever it is, will whoosh by, and that moment will be just a memory. It's gonna really come down to how quickly you're able to be ready to capture the moment. In many cases, if you're going to want to have it later on to tell the story of it. It's one thing to tell the story of what you experienced, right? Like what you saw in Ethiopia or what you ate in Taiwan. But it's another thing to show those moments as you're taking people into your experience. Bigger, fancier gear that's more expensive may very well help you get a more beautiful image, okay? And that is always absolutely a consideration. I'm not one of the people that says, gear doesn't matter whatsoever. But it may not be worth it to have bigger, fancier, heavier gear for a very simple reason, which is that if it starts getting in the way of capturing moments, that's a big problem. And the way that this happens is actually very subtle. If you find that you find it a pain in the ass to lug all the gear that you have around with you, or you start leaving it behind in specific moments, maybe at the hotel, when you go out to dinner, or you're going to visit something, you leave it in the car for a little bit. If those sorts of little moments start to creep in where you're having to make the kind of mental decision, the mental calculus, okay, is this worth it? My back's starting to hurt. I don't want to carry this around. That is kind of the insidious backdoor way of how heavier, fancier, higher quality gear can ultimately start hurting you. With that kind of rationale in mind, I'm always thinking about ways to travel lighter. I am a huge believer in traveling light. There are a lot of advantages to doing things this way. It's less damaging on your body, especially if you're walking around and moving around a lot. It's less conspicuous. You pull a lot less attention, and oftentimes guards or security people will ask less questions. You can get away with a lot more. I'm less afraid of getting robbed, and that is a huge consideration. And I capture a lot of moments with smaller cameras, including my phone, honestly, and there's absolutely no shame in that. It's kind of incredible what phones can capture nowadays and how far technology has come. Even when I'm not using my phone, I'm traveling around with my Fuji Fujifilm X-T4, which I'm filming myself with here. And then I have a little mic that I place right on top. I don't have it with me right now. I often record audio with this lav mic. And I try to keep it at just about that, you know? I'll have a tripod, a small tripod that folds up, or a mini tripod that I can carry with my hands. But I really try to keep things as limited as possible. And if you're curious about the gear that I go around and capture all of my travel stories with, it's on my website, nathaniel.drew.com/my-gear, in case you're curious and want to check it out. Doing more than that, and it can start to really weigh on my back and have a huge impact on how excited I am to go out and capture moments, or, you know, I just start to feel that kind of friction that prevents me from going out and going that extra mile to capture moments. This all boils down to yet another one of my mantras here, which is that it's infinitely better to have captured the moment than to have nothing at all. So psychologically, working through your game plan beforehand can absolutely be worth it. And if that means packing up a backpack with some gear and testing out, you know, a day in your own local city before you go to the place that you're trying to go, and see how much that weighs on you and how much it bogs you down and how quickly you're able to kind of pull out a camera and be ready, or which camera you want to use, doing a test run can absolutely be worth it. Also, you shouldn't really be trying to figure out how to use your camera on the ground. So play with it, you know, read manuals, watch tutorials, you know, get used to it first and figure out if it works for you. Because yes, it can be cool to have like this really nice rig, a shoulder rig with, you know, all these different attachments and, or a, you know, big gimbal or whatever. But if you realize like, okay, cool, that can get me a few specialty shots, but then the rest of the time it's getting in the way, it might not be worth it for you. Depends on what you want to capture and how much effort and energy you want to pour into things. All of this that I just kind of described here is part of a bigger concept that I like to call reducing friction. And by that, I mean, what are the things that you can do or think about or prepare for to make it easier for yourself when it comes time to shoot, you know, when it comes time to capture your stories? How can you let the technical gear side of things not get in the way of the stuff that really ultimately matters? Do not be afraid to ask. It's a really tricky one, especially as it's always really important to consider common courtesy and how it differs across different cultures, right? So you can literally ask somebody if you could take a photo of them or film them. And in most cases, people say yes and are absolutely happy to. Usually what I do actually is start a little bit of a conversation and have a little bit of an interaction and smile a lot and make sure that there's like a friendly atmosphere. And then I maybe ask my question. Obviously it requires a lot of feeling things out to see how things go. But there's so many photos or video clips that I would have never gotten if I didn't kind of take that uncomfortable step of asking. Having conversations with people, locals in a new place that you go, can open all kinds of doors for activities that you can do, things that people eat, or music that people listen to, or activities that people do in a particular place that you're probably not familiar with, right, if you're a foreigner. So I'm always trying to start conversations where possible in different places that I go. I always try to take into consideration what I know about the culture, and if it's a more reserved culture versus a more open culture. Wherever I go, I try to incorporate the people that live in those places. They're an integral part of the story, in my opinion. Put aside expectations and judgment and prioritize documentation. I worry about sounding redundant here, but I think it's extremely important. And this was like a breakthrough for me in my own creative process. But realizing, okay, right now at the stage that I'm at, I should focus on capturing moments. And then I'll figure out how these things sort of piece together. That offered me all kinds of freedom that I didn't have before. And on so many occasions, I've traveled with people that capture photos or videos that are kind of just starting out and finding their way, finding their voice. It's incredible to me how much self-judgment comes with that. Oh, that was a horrible photo. Oh, I totally screwed that up. You know, I've seen people delete photos right on the spot. And I'm just like, no, you don't know. Just wait, just keep going, keep focusing on capturing. And later on in Lightroom or in Final Cut or in Premiere or whatever it is that you use, you can assess the photos and videos that you've captured and see if it fits or if it doesn't, if it works or if it doesn't. Oftentimes I'm surprised. All the time I'm using clips or different moments that I've captured that I never expected to be as useful as they were, right? But that's the whole point. I'm capturing things so that I have materials to work with.